Hey everybody, welcome back. If you remember in the past, if you've watched some of my other videos, you've known that I have in the past had some struggles getting really smooth, really nice top surface layers in Cura. And it's not that I can't get them so much smooth, I have this issue here. And let me show you. I don't know, I'm hoping you'll be able to see it here. Do you see the cracks in around here? And the cracks in around here? Anytime you have a square object with a round hole, and I know that's not exactly square, I have filleted the edges. Here's another one, maybe you can see it better in this one. Oh yeah, there you go, you can see it now. You can see these cracks in here. And using concentric lines as a top surface layer would work if I had a round object, but it doesn't seem to work too good with square objects. Now, I have solved this problem in the past, but very recently I was having some computer issues, and it was oddball issues over multiple pieces of software, Cura being one of them. And as an IT guy, I'm only willing to invest so much time in chasing after gremlins until I just kick the whole thing to the curb and start over, which is what I did. I wiped my hard drives, reinstalled Windows 10, and reinstalled all my software. Now, I knew I was going to lose my Cura profiles in this process, and I intentionally did not save them because I did not want to go back. I have wiped out Cura and put Cura back in this process before I did the reinstallation of Windows, and with my profiles back in, I was having the same issues again. So I wanted to kick the whole thing to the curb. I did not want to work with those old profiles anymore, and the best way to ensure that I didn't do it was to not have them. So I wiped everything out and started over, and that's what you're seeing is my attempts to once again get back to where I was before, and maybe even better. This is one that I made before I did this, and you can see I've pretty much had solved that problem. And I also wanted to do even better than this if I could. And now all this is done with a 0.4 nozzle and a 0.32 layer height and a 0.5 line width. Now the reason I have the 0.32 layer height is because it is as much as I can go with a 0.4 nozzle, and just for right now I don't want to change nozzles. I don't want to add another layer of complexity into this problem. I'm going with a 0.5 line width because several years ago when I first started having this issue with the cracks, I got on Ultimaker's website into their forums. I posted these pictures, or pictures very similar to this. I don't have those pieces anymore because it was several years ago, and I asked for help. And one of the things one of the brainiacs over there told me to do was, excuse me, was to make my line width larger than my nozzle. And he recommended a 0.5 line width for a 0.4 nozzle. I had been using 0.32, 0.36, and even 0.40. And I found that when I, I found that when I did what he suggested, it got better. It didn't go completely away, but it got better. I started digging more, and I found things like combing mode and setting combing mode to not in skin. And I found top surface skin layers, but turning it on didn't make anything any better. And I couldn't figure out why. No matter how many top surface skin layers I set, things didn't get any better. Sorry about that. That's my dog. Previous one is my dog. This one is the phone. Okay, got that taken care of. So, no matter how many top surface skin layers I set, it didn't get any better. And I also made a video a little while back about another setting which let you start things up below where a top surface was going to be. I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but you know what? I've got a fresh cup of coffee, I've got Cura running, I've got these two models loaded in, and the reason I have two is because this one was just taking too long to print, so I made this to illustrate the problem and let me try things and see if it worked better. So, some of you may have already solved this problem. Some of you may have never had it. I have had this same problem across multiple versions of Cura and across 4 different printers. So this isn't just a Chuck problem, and I have found lots and lots of threads with other people having the problem. If you've never had it, great. more power to you. Lots of luck. I had it. Other people I've spoken to have had it, and we found cures for it. So let's pop into Cura. Let's look and see at these new changes, and let's look at what I did in the past, and let's look at what I discovered about top surface skin layers. Okay, so here we are at Cura, and you'll notice I'm doing this on the Alpha YZ20 because getting these top layers right is for something my wife wants me to print, and it's just way too big to fit on one of the Ender 3s or the Geetek A10M. So it's going on the Alpha YZ20. For those of you unfamiliar with the U20, it's pretty much a Creality CR10 clone with a touch screen and some proprietary UI. So it works very, very, very similar to a CR10 or an Ender 3. So the reason I have both of these loaded on here is because the one on the left is the larger one, and it was just taking too long to print for all of these different tests I was trying. I found a lot of information, people with a lot of suggestions on how to set things to get the best top layer. Some of them worked for me, most of them did not. Now, I don't want to point at anybody and say their settings suck, because we all know printers are different, filament is different versions of Cura is different, everything is different. So while their settings may have not worked for me, mine may not work for you, but at least they might point you to the particular settings which may help you tweak and tune to get yours right if that's what you're trying to do. Hey, and if all else fails, a year from now I may come back and look at my own video to figure out what the heck it was I did. I've done that more than once. Some of my old videos have saved my butt. So anyway, as I mentioned, let's scroll up to the top over on the right, and I'm doing this out of PLA2 as well. You see I have a 0.32 layer height. Again, it's a 0.4 nozzle and a 0.5 line width. The 0.5 line width is the first thing a Cura expert told me to try that really helped. I'm using a wall thickness of 1, a wall line count of 2, top bottom thickness 0.96 because I'm doing 3 layers. I'm using a top and bottom pattern of lines, and yes, I think I did mention I tried concentric, but the square kind of makes it even worse. If this was a round object with a round circle, I'd probably use concentric. If it was a square object with a square hole, I'd use lines. But lines in this case, with the square object and the round hole, lines do seem to work the best. So the next thing I tried that really helped, and you know what, you can turn on ironing. Ironing with 10, 12, 15% flow can help with this. The reason I hate ironing is because this is already going to be a 14, 16, 18 hour print. Ironing severely increases that time. It can more than double it. So, skin overlap percentage is something else I tried increasing. To be honest, I didn't really notice anything better, anything worse out of it. So as I was saying, the first thing I tried, let's see if I can find it down here. The first thing I tried that really seemed to make a difference was combing mode, and setting combing mode to not in skin and a combing distance with no retract of 10 millimeters. I've tried lowering this below 10, and honestly I didn't see much of a difference in that. So that's the second thing I tried other than the line width that really seemed to help. Now, infill pattern, gradual infill steps. Gradual infill steps will help you get a nice roof, but I don't use it on something this small, and something where I kind of don't want the top to be the heaviest, you know what I'm saying? So while I use gradual infill steps and I like them, I think it's too drastic a step in Cura. I think it would be nice to be able to go 20%, 30%, 40% rather than doubling it every certain number of steps. Anyway, that's just me. Skin edge support thickness is something I tried that helps roofs. It did not change this one, but I have noticed in multiple occasions it allows me to use a lower amount of infill and still get a nice roof with that first layer. And let me show you what it does. I've talked about this in a previous video. If we go to preview, and let's zoom in and look at this one, you'll notice, let me scroll down until I find it here. You'll notice right here, I've got it set to 3 layers. Right here, on the 3rd layer before it starts to print the roof, it draws a line on the inside of where the roof is going to appear and one on the outside. And that line goes up the next layer and the next layer, and then the first roof line appears, and it's got something to help it bridge across that gap. Now that doesn't seem to have any effect on my third top layer and those gaps. That's not what this really fixes, but it is a nice thing to know. So let's scroll back out a little bit, and let's get out of we'll leave that on. So print temperature I messed with up and down. Flow is something I screwed with a lot. But where we really get into this is with top surface skin layers. And when I show you what I did and talk about it, I'm going to get out and I'm going to show you all of these test pieces where I started. Unfortunately, I didn't mark all of them. I was trying to mark all of them, but then I got frustrated and impatient and I stopped. But I pretty much know what's what. So we'll talk about those when we get out of Cura here. So top surface skin layers are something, I have added 3 of them in and I couldn't tell any difference at all. And I kind of figured, well, maybe they're not for this. I didn't really know, but the more I dug, the more I found out that if you don't change the parameter for the top surface skin, you're basically going to get the same top surface skin as you got for the bottom surface skins, for the first few layers of surfaces, in other words. So you have to go into it and you have to enable all the, you can come into here and manage setting visibility, and in here you can click under search, you can click top surface. I can't spell it. I was a spelling champion in school. You'd never believe it now, but I was. And you can see all the different settings there are for top surface skin layers, and you can check them all and play with them. This is what makes the top surface skin layer different than the layer below, the top surface layer below it. Is that making any sense? Because I'm starting to think I'm sounding like an idiot, which of course is nothing horribly unusual for me. But nonetheless, you have to go in and change these settings if you want that top surface skin to be different than the skin below it. I hope that was better. But so the first thing I screwed around with was top surface skin flow, and that helped a bit, but it didn't completely cure my problem. And then I started changing speeds. And I found somebody on the internet who said they use a single top surface skin and they set the speed way low and they set the skin line width way low. And I tried that and it was horrible. I'll show it to you. It was horrible. So I started messing around with it, and you'll see we have more settings for these settings down under experimental. We come down under experimental, and now we have top surface skin line width, top surface skin pattern, and I've tried lines and concentric, top surface skin line directions, and normally there's no number in between those brackets. You have to put a number in if you want it to be different than what Cura would do without it. And what it does when you do this, it takes the number of top surface skin layers that you have designated. In my case, I told it 1. And for that one top surface layer, it uses these top surface layer parameters. And if you're saying you want 3 top layers and 1 top surface skin layer, you get 2 of the regular layers, and then you get 1 with these special parameters. And that's what always threw me in the past. Why don't my top surface skin layers look different than the ones below it? This is what changes it. Now, I have heard coasting also affects those gaps. I've turned it on and off. I honestly didn't see a difference. This small hole size is something I set, small feature size and small hole max size is something I set for a different project, and I've never bothered turning it off because it never seemed to make any difference. So one of the reasons I said that different settings work for different people is some of you may know the YouTuber who said, hey, try these settings, try going down to like 20% of your normal speed, try setting like a 0.15 line width, and do this and do that, and look at these wonderful layers I've got. And for me, it's horrible, and I'll show it to you. If you know that person, don't go to them and say, hey, Chuck says they're full of crap, because what worked for them did not work for me. Doesn't mean they're full of crap, because what works for me might not work for you either, and I don't want you saying that about me. So these are the settings I wound up with. A 0.3 line width. Again, I have a 0.4 nozzle. the skin pattern I set as lines. I put this 45 in because I wanted to make sure it was going in the opposite direction of the one below it. And I wound up with a, and this is funny, the faster, let's get back up to here, you'll see I have a top surface skin layer flow set to 105, because that seemed to make a decent amount of difference. But you'll also notice I have a top surface skin speed set at 70, which is even faster than my normal speed. I started out with like 20%, and it was awful. And the faster and faster and faster I went, the better and better and better it got. Finally, when I hit 80, 70 or 80, above 70, it didn't seem to make any difference anymore. And at 100, it started getting worse again. Or at 90, I think it started getting worse again. So now that we've taken a look at this, let's go back out and look at the parts, and let's see what they look like, and let's see what I finally wound up with these settings. Okay, so now that I showed you what I did, let's look at the best I could do before I threw everything out and made these new changes. And this again was on the Alpha YZ20. This is one I did, a test piece I did in that marble PLA that my wife bought that she wants this thing made out of. And you can see that's pretty darn good. I cured the cracks almost completely, and I had a pretty nice smooth top layer. I was very happy with that. But you know what? I wanted to see if I could do even better. So we're not going to look at these anymore, because this is where I started out after wiping everything out with a new Cura profile, and we know they suck. So let's get rid of those. So let's start with the settings that I used that I got off the net, and that is the very slow top surface skin layer, the very fine line, and that was this. You'll see I got it lifting in there almost like it was overheating and lifting up like that. I tried turning the fans on and off. That didn't seem to make much of a difference. I mean, where it printed without lifting like that, it was really nice. And this wasn't the first one I did. This one I just took off because here's one I did where I actually peeled it up by hand because I wanted to see what was going on under it. And so as I started making the line width larger and started going up in speed, things started getting better. And you can see I wound up, I marked one a 70 and 105, which is 70 millimeters per second and 105 line width, and you can see I got very, very nice, very smooth top layer with a much finer line. And I'm glad I did it in white, even though it shows all the specks of dirt and probably coffee grounds all over it. At least it shows the. And here's one where I tried concentric circles, and you can see how that turned out. And here's one that I have marked top skin, one top skin. Lines 45 across, 100% flow, and a 20% speed, and you'll see that's where I got that lifting again. And here's one with 0 top skin layers. And you see I'm pretty much back to about where I was before I threw everything out. And you'll see I went up from 20 millimeters per second to 30. And they're still there. I went from 20 to 40. And you can see it's getting better, but it's still there. And here's one marked 50 where I went to 50. And once again, it's better and better and better with each increase in speed. Here's one I marked 60. This is my normal print speed, and you'll see it's almost gone completely. All there is that one little ridge here. And then I tried 60, and I actually tried lowering the flow down to get rid of that ridge, and it didn't work. And here's one I didn't mark at all. This one's obviously one of the nicer ones. And here's another one I didn't mark. This one has no top skin at all. These green ones were earlier ones, which sucked. And these two, I don't know what they are at all. And just to show you what this printer was capable of, before I even started making these changes, I printed these two 20 millimeter open test cubes. The right one is in vase mode, and the left one is in 2 layers. You can see this printer prints really, really nicely. So it wasn't a problem with the printer, it's a problem with the square object with the round hole in it. So Here's my final ones, and you're going to laugh at what I tell you next. This is the best, and I understand we're looking at gray in one and white in the other. This is the best I could do before I threw everything out and did it over, and this is the best I could do without top surface skin layers after I recreated everything. And as I hope you can see, they're very, very similar. If anything, the new one might even be slightly better, but they're very, very similar. Now, let's take a look at the one with the top surface skin turned on and those settings I showed you. And I hope you're going to be able to see the difference here, which of course is going to rely on the camera focusing and me to get my big head out of the light. And I hope you're really going to be able to see the difference. They're very, very similar, but the lines on the one on the right are much, much finer from 0.5 to 0.3. And personally, I really like the way it looks. When I showed them to my wife and I said, you pick, she picked the one without the top surface skin layers. She thinks the slightly thicker line is better in appearance than some of the minor artifacting that top surface skin layer leaves behind. And I'm kind of torn between them. I like them both. I think they both turned out really well, but I think it can be improved upon even further. But I finally ran out of patience. I felt like I'd really, after printing all of these, I felt like I'd really come up with something that's really the best I was going to get. And certainly good enough for what we need for this, and probably better than good enough for what we need for this. So that's it. That's what I have for you today. If you have any hints that you have tried that have worked for you, please leave them in the comment section below. If you have anything you think I'm doing wrong, leave it in the comment section below. And hopefully we'll work together and we'll get these things to print as good as we absolutely can. Please like and subscribe. Please hit notifications and all that stuff. And I will catch you guys the next time. Bye for now.